this. In the past, especially with my in-laws' generation, this stuff kind of sold itself. I mean, we had a reputation for the product. The bees do all the magic. You just put it in a jar and people keep coming back and buying it. Those days are kind of over. In fact, at the end of January, we sought advice from a lot of professionals, including our politicians, not Mr. Brownell. I'm not sure if he's still here, but I'd like to thank him if he is. But we should have called him at that time. But we were actually told to close our doors. That was basically the synopsis. We had a lot of people from the finance side, from the political side, look at our situation. They said, there's no way you'll pull out of this. And that made us mad. We were not going to let this business die. I know statistically, third generation is usually the generation that kills the farm, and we are defying that convention, hell or high water. So, so what to do though? You know, there's no honey. The bees are dying. There's no seed money for new ideas. There's like, what do we do? Get a job was what a lot of people told us, and I don't even think Tim Hortons was hiring back then. So we defaulted back to a crazy idea that I tended to make fun of my mother-in-law about this. She always said, why don't you sell pickles too? I said, you know, what does pickles have to do with honey? This is kind of a ridiculous idea. But we built on this idea. We do know a lady not far from us that makes pickles and jam and all sorts of other stuff. And here we are heating a relatively large retail space selling our honey products, large in context to what we had to offer anyway. And we thought, well, why not try and sell some other people's stuff here too? From that developed a business concept that we're kind of excited about. I'll just defer to the way bees work. A lot of people think of the honeybee as a creature, and as a beekeeper, I no longer see it that way. The creature is the colony. The colony has many parts, just like you and I do. We have fingernails and hair and nose and lungs. It's the same with a beehive. They have one queen, they have a lot of workers and all this stuff, but no individual can survive on its own. They have to work together as a community to make the hive succeed. We were looking around in our community, and it wasn't just us struggling at this time. A lot of local producers, especially the small ones that were really putting their heart and soul into their product, just weren't going to make it. And a lot of people were talking about giving up, walking away, this sort of thing, which we found was a shame. So the ways bees succeed so well is they individually go out and do their individual best to find whatever the environment has from flowers and get some pollen and some nectar, and they bring it back and share it with the community. So it's the collective really that survives the hard times. And this is kind of how we modeled our business. We did not want to be a grocery store. In fact, we supply grocery stores. Not too many of them would be happy if we announced that we would be directly competing with them by opening up a store of our own. Instead, we saw a lot of the small producers open farm stands, have booths at the end of their driveways, these sorts of things. Very disconnected, a lot of loyal followings, but again, wasn't making a lot of money, especially not if you're hiring somebody to sit at the end of your driveway or paying rent or at a table every weekend, this sort of thing. So all in all, we kind of collected all these thoughts and ideas into a business model where, as was mentioned, we rent shelf space and we take a small cut at the point of sale, but everything else is up to the producer. We wholesale a lot of our honey, and we know how hard it is to make a decent profit margin once you factored in distributors and everybody that gets involved. The idea here was that a producer could produce a jar of jam, bring it to my store, and put whatever price they wanted on it. We would take a 10% cut at the till, but other than that, that margin was all theirs. This is attractive to a lot of producers, including ourselves. In fact, at the end of the day, the Glengarry Beehive is more or less... Tell them I'm in the shower. Yeah, more or less, the Glengarry Beehive is a very elaborate marketing campaign to sell more of our honey at retail. The very thing we wanted other producers to do is what we are also seeking to do. We make a lot more money when we sell you or you a jar of honey than if we sell a truckload of honey to somebody who's going to distribute it. So that's basically the idea. There's a couple other things we wanted that we felt strongly were important to build into our business model. There's three principles that we really try and focus on. One is local, which was mentioned before. There's a lot of, not just environmental reasons, but with having two children, we also like our community to stay strong and vibrant, and I moved around a lot myself when I was younger, and I'd like my children to kind of stay where they are if it's feasible for them. The next principle for us is ethical. My mother was a born activist, and she always told me that to be successful in business meant you were cheating somebody somewhere, and I'm determined to prove her wrong. We'll see. But ethics is something that's a strong part of what we do, and I think it's a great marketing strategy in the way that people, if you can prove that to people, people will come back to you. We have loyal customers that have come for decades. I know guys that have bought from Joanne's grandfather that still buy our honey, and it's for the reasons that they can trust us that they do so. The final principle is accountability, and this is something else with our store, that each and every product you buy at the Glengarry Beehive has the producer's name, phone number, and address right on the shelf. In fact, hopefully by the end of next week, we'll have a computer terminal set up in the store, which will actually allow customers to email directly to the consumer with any questions they have or that sort of thing. So that's kind of the idea of the store. Just really quickly, we picked three things on the report that really struck home. The first one was, we have a hard time seeing the forest for the trees. I wish I could really explain just how much of a problem this is. We get up 5:30, 6 in the morning, try and get the kids off to school, and then get ourselves off to work. But it's not too often that the plans that we've made at 5:30 with our first coffee haven't changed by 8 o'clock in the morning, and usually by noon they've changed again, and a lot of times by midnight, the next week is all screwed up. And all these little things. We have one employee, and she's part-time right now because we can't afford to keep her longer. We need her back, but this is a key factor in the mistakes that we're making, is that we're doing too much on our own. We're micromanaging, and it does not allow us enough time to look at the big picture. That's where this consultation was enormously helpful, because a lot of the things really that we've read through, we've thought of before. It's just to take the time to focus in on them and get them done. That's quite difficult. So that was a key lesson. We really do need to work on build clearer relationships with our clients based on business considerations. And this is a third-generation succession situation. So when we say, well, we're raising this and this person's price, and my father-in-law says, oh, you can't do that. 20 years ago we had this agreement. He's always been a good friend. And we're not thinking like business people. We're still thinking like the traditional farmer. That just doesn't cut it nowadays. There's no farmers anymore, or at least none that do it for a living. We're all agribusiness people, and we have to be that way. This is very counterintuitive to us, I must say, and something we have to focus on a lot more. And finally, probably the golden egg in all of this was our focus on tourism. Frankly, it's not something we'd at all thought about. I mean, we're a local store, right? It's supposed to be about selling this neighbor's tomatoes to that neighbor. We do have pretty good tourism in our area, though, and this is a critical time when most of the produce is available. Targeting tourism isn't really something we had thought about at all, so that's going to be our number one focus for this summer, is to get out to the campsites and promote that sort of thing. So, just in closing, just want to say something about passion, because it was mentioned as one of our strengths, and we're really touched that you guys see us that way. Sometimes we think it's maybe insanity instead of passion, but when I met my father-in-law, he gave me the impression that this man just talks about bees. That's all he talked about. There's no sports and no politics. He just talked about bees, right? And, I'd roll my eyes and I'd swore to myself I'd never turn into that. Well, I've become my father-in-law. I mean, if you get talking to me about bees, you have to stop me somehow, because it's a passion. And I guess at the end of the day, I've tried to be an entrepreneur in the past when I was younger, and I did it because I was poor and I wanted money, and that was my general motivation. But I have no passion to make money. I'd like to drive a Ferrari. I'd like to send my children to Queen's or the university of their choice, but money doesn't turn me on, Bees do. And sorry, did that come out wrong? Anyway, I guess I'd just like to conclude with, we all hear a lot of farmers complaining, and it is tough out there, don't get me wrong, but the number one thing that we have to remind ourselves is that we're really privileged to to make a living doing something that we love. And not too many people can say that nowadays. So with that in mind, I'd just like to thank everyone again, especially Philip and Natasha. Thanks for all your hard work, and thanks.